been told to, we've been told to kind of stay in the square, and I think stay in my frame on the video. So normally I'm down here on the floor, but I'm up here.
And be sure to smile. You're on camera.
Today we're going to be talking about zeal, desire, passion. So I'll be smiling quite a bit as we go. I've made reference on several of the previous talks here that my zeal button seems to be just pressed down on all the time. And one of the aspects about zeal is that zeal, desire, passion, as it were, is like the energizing power. The energizing power. We've talked about that before. I'm going to put this microphone up. I think I don't put something kind of cutting out of this thing. Shouldn't have any trouble hearing me anyway. As I was saying, zeal is what we're going to call, for our purposes here, the energizing power. And we'll get back to it in just a moment, but I want you to be thinking about something as we go through this discussion here today. Zeal, Charles places zeal sort of like what they call medulla oblongata. Another way to say that is it's sort of at the base of our brain. And it's also associated with like the hypothalamus region. And that desire, anytime we desire something, we have a zeal for something, all kinds of chemical reactions start happening from this hypothalamus area and creates all kinds of good feelings for us. But if we've ever heard the term zealot, in fact, one of the apostles was called Simon the Zealot, the word itself over the course of time has come to kind of connote somebody who's overzealous. They're kind of just, without regard for any other thing. They're just being driven by their zeal and their enthusiasm. And just like all the other 12 powers, which we're going to recap here in just a moment, just like all the other 12 powers, zeal was never intended to operate by itself. Zeal, probably more than any other of the 12 powers, absolutely must work in concert with some of the others so that we don't become overzealous, so that we don't become a zealot and so committed to our position and everything that we're not able to bring in any other understanding, intelligence, wisdom, love even. I mean, think about it. If you think about it, if you just ran around being driven by your desires without tempering those with love or wisdom or spiritual understanding, just think about how quickly we could go off the rails. So we're going to come back to that in just a moment. So what I want to do now is I want to back up, and I want to remind everybody that when I come in each month, I kind of recap the 12 powers that we've talked about to date. It's not intended for this to be like a lecture kind of thing. Emily Cady says, we learn through repetition. So if we think about the repetition aspect of this as being part of the way that we learn as a lesson, not a lecture, it helps us to take hold of those things and remember them easily. So the repetition of this is intended to kind of give us little mnemonic devices, little hook lines, if you will, about how to recognize and put these different 12 powers in order. So going back to the beginning of the year, in January, we talked about the power of will. And I said that's the executive power. Will is the part of us that makes a decision about things. We're making decisions all day long. We got input coming in all the time. We're sorting, and we're making a decision about that. Whatever the will decides to do, whatever the will decides upon, all the other powers have no choice but to go along with it. So once again, if the will is operating in isolation of the other powers, that too can be sort of a dangerous thing, if you will. Will has to work in concert, once again, understanding, even with zeal, love, the power of divine order, all those things. In February, we talked about the power of love, and I chose that in February because Valentine's Day is sort of symbolic of the month and so forth. So I chose love to talk about, and love is the harmonizing power. Love is what brings all these other powers sort of into harmony with one another. And if we're operating efficiently and in alignment with our 12 powers in the right way, then love is the thing that's going to harmonize and kind of help everything to move together as one as we move forward. In March, we talked about faith, and faith is the perceiving power. Charles also talks about faith as being the receiving power, and he places the power of our faith in our pineal gland, which is right at the center of our brain. And that if we start peeling back the pineal gland, I'm told, I've never peeled back a pineal gland, so I have to take this on faith, but I'm told that if you peel back the pineal gland and you get to the center of it, that what you'll find there is a little crystal. Now think about that like a crystal radio. Remember the old crystal radio kits and everything? They're little receivers and everything. And so I'm told that at the center of a pineal gland, there's a little crystal. You'll recall that faith, in terms of being linked to the apostles, was a link to Peter, who was also named Simon before he was known as Peter. And that idea about, I will build my church on this rock, right? So the rock, faith like a rock, has been sort of a metaphorical symbol that we use. Well, if that's true, if it's true that they've got this little crystal rock at the center of our pineal gland, that's kind of a pretty apt metaphor, I would say. But once again, it's for us, it's a perceiving power, but it's also where we receive guidance from God through this. So faith is how we perceive, and then it's linked to the power of imagination, which I talked about in April. The power of imagination is sort of our projecting power. Think of it like a movie screen, right? And so faith perceives something that's not yet informed, and through our faith we project that into our power of imagination. Like a movie screen, the power of imagination, you can think of it as like the language of our subconscious, and it's what starts putting clothes on everything, right? It starts giving form, color, texture. With respect to like a song, as I've said before, is also like things like melody and rhyme in your lyrics and rhythm and things like that. Those are all part of the imagination that you bring together to dress up this idea at the heart of a song, right? So in May we talked about the power of power. Our power is associated with our larynx and our throat, which is also associated with our word. I call this our expressing power. I also call it the creative power, because the truth is, at our voice level, that's where all of the powers kind of come together, right? Whatever's happening in your power of order or renunciation or imagination or faith or any other kind of thing, when we put words to it, that's when the expression of power is. Charles calls this the power of power. He also talks in the chapter of the 12 powers, on this chapter of power, he also uses the words dominion and mastery as other words to associate with that, because we demonstrate our mastery, we demonstrate our dominion over our lives by the words that we speak. Remember this, I am, the two most powerful words in the English language, because whatever follows I am is what you're going to get. I am, fill in the blank. That's going to become your reality. Which is also consistent with unity principle number 3, which says we create our experiences through our thoughts, words, and actions, right? So as soon as we express that word, that's what we're going to follow. Remember, in Genesis, the whole universe kicks off its creation process with, let there be light. The vibrations of those words kick things into motion. In June, I talked about the power of spiritual law and order. Spiritual law and order is sort of our prioritizing power. Now, before I say that, that's our power about how we can put things in order, but we should also acknowledge that from the level of divine intelligence, everything is in perfect order, right? So there's two aspects to the power of spiritual law and order. One is that we're able to recognize the underlying spiritual law and order that exists. And then once we can recognize and see that for ourselves, then we can go about putting things and prioritizing things in our life to act in accordance with that power. I guess we're now to July, and I think in July I talked about the power of renunciation. The power of renunciation is our eliminating power. It's the power for us to say no in order to say yes. It's associated with our digestive tract, just metaphysically speaking, in our bodies, and so that's an apt metaphor as well, because it's through our digestive processes, that's how we release toxins and so forth from our body. It's the same way in a spiritual sense. This power of renunciation is the way for us to say no to things that are not necessarily in our best interest, so that we can open ourselves up to the greater good that's available to us. Now, in August and September, I talked about I call the twin powers, which is the power of understanding and the power of judgment / wisdom / discernment. Y'all remember last month's conversation where we kind of parsed out that it's hard for us to develop a power of judgment, as it were, because we have judgment on the word judgment. We have challenge is with that word. It's got kind of a lot of mixed connotations that are troubling. So if I say, hey, develop your power of judgment, people would have resistance to that in general, because there's troubling connotations with that word. And I proposed that probably a better word for it would be discernment. Because discernment, the definition of discernment, actually implies that you're judging well. Any of us ever heard of bad judgment? Right? How about even in the judgment of the court? Do the courts always get it right? Right, no. So judgment as a word itself has to have qualifiers to it. That's why I'm proposing that the power of discernment is probably a more apt, powerful thing that we can move next to. Now, power of judgment is a thinking process. The power of understanding is an intuitive process. Judgment helps us to sort out and sort of make choices, make decisions, zeros and ones, light, dark, love, fear, all those kinds of dualistic kinds of things that we do. It's a thinking process. But the power of spiritual understanding is an intuitive process. Judgment can help us put things in categories, but it doesn't help us at all to glean meaning from that. So the power of our spiritual understanding is where we glean meaning from what we're experiencing. The power of understanding is an intuitive thing. It's not a thinking thing. It's how, in creative endeavors, for example, if you're gardening, if anybody gardens, you get that point to when you're gardening and you're just down there mixing it up with the dirt and everything, and time just kind of moves away, and you're not thinking about gardening, you're just gardening. And it's the same way with playing music. There's an aspect of learning music. For those, somebody mentioned they want to learn guitar at some point in time. When you start learning guitar, at a certain point, at that first level, you're thinking about playing guitar. You're thinking about how the chords are formed and how the strumming goes, and you get frustrated, and then you think about how frustrated you are, and it kind of piles on itself. If you keep woodshedding, there's no shortcut to it. There's no other way but to practice guitar to get good at guitar, just like any other endeavor. It's the repetition and the woodshedding, as it were, that gets us in shape. If we go to the gym, for example, we're conditioning our bodies, it's the repetition of the exercises and the consistency of that over the course of time. Next month, I'm going to be talking about the power of strength, which is sort of the persevering power, the endurance power. And that's certainly something that we all need when we're trying to work on something long-term towards a long-term goal. So all that brings us current to the power of zeal / desire / passion. I'm calling this particular talk, Name Your Passion. Name your passion. Zeal, it's kind of in some respects, it's not a word that we use a lot, is it? It's not a word that just kind of comes up in common language. It's a little bit, kind of a throwback. What's the word they use for that? Anachronistic. It's just kind of a throwback a little bit. Charles famously said, just a few months before he passed away at the age of 94, I learned here recently that there's a piece of construction paper, like children's construction paper from an elementary school, and it looks like Charles wrote in crayon on this piece of construction paper, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do that which is mine to do. He was 94 years old when he wrote that in crayon. That particular little piece of construction paper is sort of enshrined in the Unity Library as a nice little artifact from Charles's past. But you think about that, 94 years old and still excited about life. Probably most of us here in the room have probably at one time or another gone through levels of depression in our life, or periods of depression, ups and downs, ebbs and flows and everything. And sometimes when we're down, and we're down in that valley, it becomes really, really difficult and challenging for us to figure out how to go forward. Should we go forward? If it's going to be more of this, then why should I go forward? And pretty soon we're starting to feel hopeless. Well, guess what the antidote to that is? The power of zeal, the power of desire, the power of passion. I'm going to make a confession here. I should be probably making this confession to the teacher, Paul Hasselbeck at Unity Village, but I'm going to go ahead and make it to you all here publicly, and we'll just kind of send it on waves, and he'll know that I'm sort of apologizing to him a little bit. And when I was in the last year of my OUT studies, my last metaphysics class that we had to take during that period, there was about 10 of us in the class going through it at Unity Village. And there came an exercise. It's about the 4th or 5th day of the class. We're getting near the end of the week. And Paul comes around and he hands each one of us a card that's drawn from this deck. He wrote the book, by the way, along with one or two other folks, called Heart-Centered Metaphysics, which is now sort of the Unity text that we use and teach metaphysics from. Before, it used to just be a bunch of loose leaf lessons and everything in little curly cube bound books and stuff like that. And they finally got it all together and actually put it in a bound book. But he has a companion product also that's these cards, just like, angel cards or whatever. But in these cards, he's got different kinds of, words, including the 12 powers. And so he's dropping these cards on in front of each one of us, and we're supposed to just come up with a spontaneous, little 5-minute presentation to talk about this. Well, he dropped the card love in front of me. Now, coming from a Course in Miracles background, like I have the consciousness, I should say, that love is all there is. Like everything, we've all kind of heard that. It's like love is the only real power in everything. And so it comes around to me, and I do my little presentation, and then I sit back down, and Paul says, "Well, Rick, what comes before love?" And I go, "I don't think anything comes before love. Love is the one power." He's like, "No, there's something before love." And I'm like, "I don't think so." And so we got a little testy with each other there in the class about it, because I was trying to refute. I couldn't for the life of me think about anything that came before love. Well, he proposed, and as the discussion ensued, he proposed that what comes before love is desire. And I was like, well, how could desire come before love? Because if there was something before love, then love is secondary, not primary. And that just kind of was threatened to sort of upset my whole little cosmological view at that point in time, and I wasn't ready to have it, shook up. So this morning, as I was going over my notes again for this morning before I got here, it kind of clicked with me. It's like, oh, this is what he was talking about. Well, if he'd have said the power of zeal, I probably would have dove in way back when and kind of read about the power of zeal and the 12 powers and tried to figure that out. But it wasn't until this morning, maybe 3 years down the line, when it finally clicked with me this morning. That's what he was talking about, because the truth is this: desire is the first action. We see something. Remember, I said it's here at the base of our brain, right? We do belong to God. That's also sort of part of our reptilian kind of instinctive kinds of things. We see something and we desire it. Then we fall in love with it. But there's an instinct, an impulse. And that impulse, the power of zeal, what Charles is talking about, is that's the impulse to go forward. If you feel yourself moving towards something in your life, anything, and it can be good for you and it can be bad for you, just like any of the other 12 powers, we can misuse these things, okay? But if you have that urge to go forward, you feel that impulse to go forward, that's your power of desire. That's your power of passion. That's your power of zeal. It's the impulse to go forward. Charles also describes zeal as being energy in motion. So if everything is energy, desire is what gets that energy moving. So if you're moving through energy, if you're creating something, you're building energy in your life, behind it all, it's going to be that power of desire, that power of zeal pushing that forward. That's why I call it the energizing power. It's what gives energy to anything. If it's healing, how many people, my sister right now, we were going through the prayer list earlier, and I know there's a lot of folks inside this place and outside this place, our extended families and everything, who we're always kind of in need of prayer. That's why I played the song Pray this morning, because the idea about pray is that pray all the time. Pray in the morning, pray at night, pray at this time, pray at that time, pray in every circumstance you can think of. Because you probably need it yourself, on a day-in, day-out basis. But even if you're feeling really, really good about your life and its balance and everything, there are still plenty of others that need our prayers. They need those thoughts. They need that healing energy moving forward in their lives. So it's incumbent upon us that idea about pray without ceasing has always sort of captivated my imagination, right? So with respect to zeal, that energy in motion idea is where we're going to kickstart things. That's when we get excited about it, the power of zeal. So I want to close today. We're talking about why I call this name your passion. If you'll recall back in Genesis, I think it's in Genesis, maybe Exodus, when Moses goes up to the mountain, he has this conversation with God, right? God's giving him all this instruction, and he's supposed to go back down and now tell everybody about what God has said. Before Moses leaves, he says, "Who shall I say is sending me?" Who shall I? What's your name? What's your name? Now, if you think about it in the context of the times, in the centuries and maybe even millennia before this story comes down in the Hebrew tradition, there was a polytheistic, there were multiple gods. They had gods for everything in the Greek and Roman traditions, even going back to the Egyptian traditions and everything. There was a god for everything. They named them, and the idea was that gods were coming down and sort of in some kind of heavenly place, but they also come down and intervene in man's affairs, and they interact with men. And to know the name of a god gave you power over it. If you think about it, if you know the name of a god and you evoke or invoke the name of the god, even in our prayers, when we say our Father, that's a naming, and we're bringing that presence in. So by Moses asking for the name, it was a way to draw into an intimate relationship with the divine. If I know your name, then I have power over you because I'm in an intimate relationship with you. Not necessarily power over you, but there's a shared power when you're in an intimate relationship, isn't there? And then that starts with knowing the name. So I'm saying name your passion because maybe everybody in this room already knows what their passion is. Maybe you already have a name for it. But there might be some other things that you have passion for or desire to manifest in your life that you've been thinking about for like a long time in your life, but have never really gotten any traction on and bringing into your life. And that's because you haven't really named it really clearly as to what you're trying to do. By naming your passion, by giving it a name, you start using your power of imagination, among other things, to start giving life to it, right? If I can name, back before I was a songwriter, I've been kind of a songwriter most of my life, kind of in and out, but not really seriously until I was 40. By that point in time, I'd already been through working the corporate track and all those kinds of things. I'd already been through my depression, my midlife crisis. I'd already crashed. I'd already been through my depressed period. And it was at my lowest in my depressed period when I was sort of losing everything that I was trying to figure out what to hang on to. What should I do next? And it was that desire to say, you know what? I've done it this other way and I have no idea where life is going right now, but one thing I am passionate about is being creative. And my favorite way to be creative is by singing, by playing music. And so I started songwriting at that point in time. And wrote bad songs at first, and then sort of bouquet songs. And most of them felt really contrived there for a little while, like because I was trying to be clever in my songwriting. And then one day I wrote this song that I knew was coming from some other place inside of me. Some other place inside of me that wasn't in my head. I wasn't thinking my way through the writing of the song. It was some aspect of my being that was being expressed, and it made me cry. Like I'd written songs for 10, 15, 20 years, written songs with other people, and as I said, they were all in the head. They were all clever. They never really made me cry. They never really tapped into an authentic emotion within me. They were just clever. They were fun to write, but they were just clever. I don't play any of those songs anymore. They're still in a book somewhere, but I don't play any of them because they're not really connected to my core. They're not really authentic. Okay? But I learned that at that low point, when I was hopeless, when I was depressed, when I felt the whole weight of the world crashing down on me, when the idea of my zeal, my desire was almost being crushed out. If you've ever felt hopeless in your life, that's because the pilot light on your power of zeal, your power of desire has been turned down. But guess what? It can never be extinguished. It's always there. If you're willing to turn the pilot light up and turn the heat up on it, you have it. And it is so useful in so many ways, especially in your healing. Because think about it. My sister right now is going through stage 4 cancer. I saw her this past Monday. My mother and she came to Austin last weekend. I was out of town for the first couple of days, but had lunch with them before they went back on Monday. And I hadn't seen her in about a month or so at that point in time. And I almost cried when I first saw her because I saw how progressive the disease is in just the 1 month that I had seen her. She was barely walking across the parking lot. She had an additional surgery in the meantime, so she's healing from that. She's not even really trying to heal cancer. Based on the prognosis, it's just a matter of trying to keep her comfortable for as long as possible at this point in time. And it hurt me. It hurt me. We sat there, we had a great lunch. I didn't show her, that I was feeling bad. We just had a normal conversation. Just visited as if nothing was wrong. But inside me, I was realizing that her energy dimming down because her body's requiring so much to fight off what's going on in her body. I wonder, like, where's her zeal? Where's her desire at this point in time? Like, how heavy all that is. I can't even imagine it. I can't even imagine how heavy that must feel. She's my baby sister. She's only 44 years old. So it's tough on all of us. It's tough on my mother. Okay, but I know this, that whatever happens to her, however much time she's got left, what I talk with her about is like, look, you may not have a choice right now about what is happening to you, but you definitely have a choice about how you're going to go through it. You are at choice and you are at power about how you're going to go through it. And to the best of your ability, try to still have this energy, this energizing power of your desire, your passion. Because whether you beat this or not, okay, one thing's for sure, that you won't overcome it unless you've got the power, desire, and passion, and zeal behind it, because that's what energizes everything. So if you feel down, if you feel hopeless, if you feel depressed, if you feel like circumstances are converging upon you, you have to pause for a moment. And you have to know first that you have power in this. In fact, you have 12 powers in this. And if we start mixing all the powers together, if we start getting into algorithms and exponential, multiplication, it's way beyond the 12 powers. Because if we're in alignment with our 12 powers and operating efficiently with all of them, the power that we demonstrate, the power that we manifest in our lives it's incalculable. I mean, think about it. It's like, would everybody in this room agree that no matter what you've achieved in this life, that there's more that you could achieve? Does everybody recognize a place in their life, something they've wanted to give manifestation to in their lives, but for one reason or another, time, money, lack of belief and talent, that we actually haven't moved forward in? Something that you've left unaccomplished in your life. If you have something left unaccomplished in your life at this point in time, I'm going to put it to you and we'll close here with this idea that if you have something unmanifest in your life that you thought about over the course of your lifetime, and you might have made some attempts, and maybe got discouraged, you can put it aside, other things got in your way, and whatever the excuses are. I've had them too. I've got a long list of excuses in the way of things that I haven't accomplished yet. Okay? But I ask you, or encourage you to look at that. What is left undone in your life? Is this something that you're telling yourself that you want to do because it would feel good to do it, or is it something that you really, really want to do that you haven't yet done? Because, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, there is no tomorrow. This is it. I'm not even guaranteed that when I leave here that I will make it home. I hope I do, and I feel reasonably sure I will. But there's no guarantee, is there? There is no tomorrow to start this stuff. You can start, if it's nothing else than getting a journal down today and writing it down so that you can get it out of your head onto a piece of paper so you can see it and start touching it and feeling it and making it seem real. You've got to first get it out of bumbling around in your head. You got to put it down. You got to speak it. You got to give expression to it. I don't know what that is for you, but you know what that is for you. And you know where you've demonstrated your power, and you know where you've backed away from your power. I'm encouraging you that with your power of zeal, with your power of desire, with the power of passion, and the energy that comes along with that, you have all the power that you need to create whatever you want to create. So, go forward. That's what the power of desire is for. That's what the power of zeal is for. If you feel an impulse to go forward, know that that is the divine desire within you, because God didn't even create the universe until He first had a desire to. Namaste.